Trip was made mainly in London are already hopelessly overcrowded.
The answer is both tangential and obvious. Floating cities. Now, I'm walking the promenade deck of what could be termed a floating city because it has all of the facilities of a floating city, that grand old lady, the Queen Mary. She really is quite magnificent, and she's still the largest structure afloat. But compared to the floating cities of the future, well, they'd dwarf this vessel.
The technology for the kinds of cities we're talking about have already been developed and demonstrated in the North Sea in the large oil storage platforms. These platforms, which are made of pre-stressed concrete, are built in large floating areas or dry docks, and then they're floated out to sea and sunk in place.
And they're incredibly stable, aren't they?
They are very, very large, and they're incredibly stable. And even in the very rough storms of the North Sea, if you were to be located on one of these platforms, you would barely sense the motions of the platform.
The biggest and bravest attempt at a floating city so far has come from the Japanese. They called it Aquapolis, and it was their answer to the pollution and overcrowding of cities on land. Aquapolis was constructed in Hiroshima and then towed to Okinawa, where it was moored offshore. Okinawa is a typhoon zone, so to make Aquapolis able to withstand waves up to 15 metres, it was engineered so that it could be partly submerged. It was built to hold 2,400 people. Over 3 levels, there were offices, accommodation and a heliport. The top deck housed generators and boilers for electricity and air conditioning. A desalination plant was capable of producing 60 tonnes of fresh water a day. Sewage was chemically treated and recycled as fresh water. There were comfortable apartments, a big convention hall, and a determination that Aquapolis would not repeat the environmental mistakes of the big cities.
And it is my hope that by the year 2020, we will have the general notion that the city centre will no longer desecrate the land, but will be an out to ennoble the sea.
To be realistic, large-scale floating cities remain pretty much a dream at the moment. But certainly, there are some amazing dreams.
The cost of building these complexes is amazingly lower than the cost of building these complexes on land. But why is that so? When we build a building on land, we build it truckload by truckload. When we build a building out in the ocean, we build it shipload by shipload. The economies of scale make the space in the ocean of much lower cost than the space on land.
Perhaps one day man will build a new Atlantis, or maybe a few of them. When you think about it, it makes sense. Land highways can cost as much as $20 million a kilometre to build. The ocean highway is free. At Walt Disney's Epcot Centre in Florida, you can get about as close to underwater habitats as we have so far. Who knows, beyond 2000, this may all be a living reality.
And I'm invited to throw it around. With accelerator flat to the floor, a brave Herr Moch beside me, and without the ASR, the vehicle was in a spin in no time at all. But with the system on, try as I might, I couldn't spin her around.
The era of the truly intelligent car is upon us, and some may be very disappointed. It won't necessarily have lots of flashy screens, gaudy dashes, and lines like the space shuttle. The intelligence will be discreet, barely discernible, and unlikely to distract the driver. Like the best intelligence of all, it will be most noticeable when it's most needed. Well, I'm off for a drive into the country, but meanwhile, back at the track, Guido and Gerhard are going for a spin.
Bertone.
Italy has a tradition of talented coach builders, stylists that can repeatedly drape quite ordinary mechanical running gear with fantastic mouldings, shapes that plumb the psyche of the car-buying public, evocative contours that suddenly make a car more desirable, more collectible. There are some great exponents of this automotive sorcery: Saletti, Pininfarina, Gier, Leggera, and the designer of this car, Bertone. This is the Ramarro, Italian for green lizard. Underneath is the engine and chassis of the Chevrolet Corvette. The object of this design exercise was to take a car that's already a runaway success in the United States and subtly change the recipe so that it becomes irresistible. The Bertone shape is more linear and taut than its muscular forebear. Inside, it's wider and roomier, largely because the automatic stick shift is now flush-mounted on the dash console. There are a number of other departures from the expected in this package.
For example, the radiator has been moved from the front to the rear. That immediately makes the car 33 centimetres shorter, but it also gives the car better road holding. Now, the 5.4 litre motor is cooled by the aerodynamic downdraft that sweeps over the bonnet and hood and into a thermostatically controlled ventilator hatch. Like the 58 other prototypes that went before it, this car possibly could become a fully fledged production line model. But if history's any guide, elements like the ventilator hatch will be incorporated in other cars that you and I will drive over the next 2 decades.
The double-acting sliding doors that simultaneously open laterally and slide forward are another interesting feature of the prototype. Typically, two-door coupes have quite large doors that are difficult to open without trauma in tight parking lots. The Ramarro has a robust sliding mechanism incorporated into the profile of the car, which is then underscored by painting in 3 shades of green. It's radical departures like these that have set the Bertone coach building company apart. Originally begun in 1912 by Giovanni Bertone, the company has designed some truly influential vehicles. Conceptual work for current designs takes place in this inspirational valley about 30 kilometres from Turin in northern Italy. One of the craggy mountain peaks is topped by a 2,000-year-old monastery. For a car enthusiast, approaching the Bertone design studio is something of an act of reverence. Here then is a tabernacle to the automobile. Its objects of worship, the prototypes, are housed beneath the building in the basement. We were fortunate enough to glimpse a few of the Bertone icons, wheeled out into the sun for us to film. Among them, the powerful V12 mid-engined Lamborghini Miura, designed back in 1967. The striking gull-winged Lamborghini Mazzal, and the Lancia Stratos, the car which won the World Rally Championship 3 times. They're all hybrid exotics, and a couple have enjoyed modest production runs. But there's no doubting their overall influence on the motoring world.
The evolution of a prototype of any consequence takes these draftsmen sometimes thousands of hours. And since even large companies have discovered that it's very difficult indeed to come up with exotic cars by committee, just about all the major decisions on style and performance, in fact the entire direction of this company, is made by just one man, Nuccio Bertone.
Nuccio is now in his early 70s, but he shows no signs of relinquishing the reins. He works daily with a small and trusted cadre of designers and craftsmen who interpret his wishes. The hallmark of the company has been the evolution of dream cars that not only look exciting, but are drivable and functional. The ex-road racer with a degree in accountancy is, after all, a pragmatist. But what of Bertone's thoughts of the future? What type of cars will be parked in front of his design studio by the year 2000?
Talking with eminent figures of the mechanical world, we know that the internal combustion engine has still got a very long future. Therefore, it is not in the program to do something transcendental as far as the car propulsion is concerned. I would also say that the restrictive car regulations should not worry us too much. Both the regulations and the mechanical requirements do not represent something that will stop the fantasy of the designer. But as a result, a designer is twice as good if they are capable of producing something better. And this is always part of the challenge. It is a kind of competition between these obstacles and the designer.
Some of Nuccio Bertone's concepts for the future are already here. Like this car, which we parked for a few minutes in a busy Turin piazza. It didn't take long for an admiring crowd to gather. The Zabrus embodies high performance and spaciousness, Citroen's adjustable suspension, and Lamborghini Countach-style lift-up doors.
Sleek, isn't it? Well, these embossed leather seats are not just for show. They're orthopedically designed to start with. They swivel sideways so that the passenger doesn't have to slip a disc to get into the back seat. And of course, it makes it easier for the driver to get in. But also they have another purpose. There's an infrared sensor here and at the back, and that raises and lowers the seat so that you get the optimum driving position. And I can feel it just slowly going up now. Inside, there's a twist to the compact disc system. There's one for hi-fi, and there's one that has the map of Turin encoded inside it. And Italian traffic being what it is, I guess you need all the help you can get. But ultimately, like all Bertone vehicles, this car is meant for driving.
The Zabrus is a GT coupe with sparkling performance from a turbocharged power plant. But it is, at the same time, a touring car with ample room for 4 passengers. This is Bertone's concept for a family car of the 1990s, a period that will bring with it increased motoring costs, more superhighways, more congestion, stricter safety standards, and emission controls. But hopefully automobiles, perhaps our most cherished cultural artefacts, will not be relegated entirely to dullness and blandness. There'll always be a designer like Bertone who can interpret those rather mundane and rational imperatives with style, romance, and fantasy.
Coming next, the robot spy in the sky. News. A Land Rover arrives at an airfield in England carrying a rather unusual flying machine. It looks perhaps like a model helicopter, except that there's no tail rotor. But this is no toy. Weighing in at 36 kilograms, it's light enough to be carried by 2 men. Its name is the Sprite. That's an acronym of surveillance, patrol, intelligence gathering, target designation, and electronic warfare. Putting that into simpler terms, it's a cheap way of getting a bird's eye view. This little helicopter doesn't have a tail rotor, but even so, it's an extraordinarily stable platform for whatever you want to mount on it. Sensors, chemical sniffers, or in this case, a small television camera. The camera is mounted in a completely detachable module, so you can take that out and install anything else in its place. The reason it's so stable is because it has contra-rotating propellers. The power is provided by two 6-brake horsepower converted chainsaw motors running on, would you believe it, lawnmower fuel, 2-stroke. Down here there's a laser altimeter which sets the altitude that the helicopter flies at. All in all, it's a cheap, not very visible spy in the sky.
There are quite a few different types of sensors that you can carry on a Sprite. TV, black and white color TV, thermal imager, ability to see at night, things like that. Quite apart from chemical sensors, there are some uses where you need to monitor the atmosphere, either around a suspect power station, for instance, or in the military case, they might be interested in nuclear and chemical warfare type of surveillance. We've even had people interested in crop spraying, would you believe, for such a small vehicle as this.
Is that feasible, do you think?
Some crop spraying chemicals are so expensive they cost about the equivalent of Chanel No. 5, and you have to put them down precisely on the rows of crops. Well, Sprite is able to fly along one row, back along the other row. Grassland people who are looking for centers of disease, for instance, in grasslands or in forestry, game preserves, herd monitoring and things like that.
Conventional helicopters are very sensitive to horizontal gusts. Not so the Sprite. Also, because it accelerates only half a G on takeoff and landing, the sensors on board get a good ride. Back at the Land Rover, the operator and observer sit at a console with TV monitors. The joystick controls the speed and direction of the craft, while the antenna mounted on the roof of the vehicle receives the television pictures. Usually the operators don't tend to let it get out of their sight, but it's so small that at a distance of 1 kilometre it's virtually invisible when it's hovering, especially when there are trees or buildings in the background. The Sprite's 2 engines are always only operating at half power. If one engine fails, the other engine automatically goes up to full power, and the Sprite can still fly satisfactorily. This little robot has now reached an advanced stage of development, and the manufacturers, ML Aviation, say it could be used for everything from geophysical surveys to game park supervision. In the future, keeping an eye on things is going to be a lot cheaper, thanks to the Sprite.
Press a button, say to make Don Quixote jump out of the well. Games, and to the familiar car racing video games is this, the GP World Car Race. The Laserdisc footage was actually shot on a racetrack in Japan, and when displayed on 2 TV screens, cunningly joined by a mirror, the effect is startlingly real. The microchips superimpose computer-generated racing cars onto the screen, and like any other cars, they spin off the track if you drive too fast, and they crash if you drive too carelessly. Laserdisc games currently have teething problems. They're not yet perfectly reliable, but whether Laserdisc or computer-generated, what all of these games have in common is that the opponent is a computer, not a human being. But this game, VS Tennis, is somewhat different. Okay, Chris, anyone for tennis?
Don't mind if I do.
This game is computer-generated, not Laserdisc, but it's considerably improved.
Sky Channel.
Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island.
There would be hardly a person in a developed world who does not comprehend to some degree the significance of those words and of the terrible malfunctions that occurred at these two huge nuclear power stations. 3 Mile Island in the United States in 1980 and Chernobyl in the Soviet Union in April 1986. The implications of radiation exposure and widespread fallout from large-scale civilian disasters like these has brought an acute awareness of what a horrendous fate would befall humanity in the event of an all-out nuclear war.
After the increase in infant mortality, we might expect increases related to bone marrow damage, which is caused by exposure to ionizing radiation. It weakens the immune system, and we may see more infectious diseases occurring.
This is a fairly standard type of instrument for measuring exposure to industrial radiation. It's called a whole body counter, and it can detect the minutest amounts of radiation being emitted by the human body. Even if you've never been anywhere near a nuclear reactor, let alone something like Chernobyl. Everybody has a small amount of radiation occurring naturally in their bodies. And a team of Australian doctors and physicists have developed a novel way of using that fact, plus this whole body counter, to improve and perhaps even prolong the lives of children who suffer from that terrible disease, cystic fibrosis.
Dr. Ross Shepherd, a senior lecturer in child health at Queensland University, heads the research effort which has led to a number of new approaches to dealing with cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a hereditary disease. It's the most common inherited chronic disease in Caucasian children, affecting 1 in every 2,500 births. The gene that causes the disease is now carried by 1 in every 25 people. A child born with cystic fibrosis usually faces a life of chronic pulmonary disease. Here, outpatient children are being